Warning, the following podcast contains irreverent humor, uneducated and exceptionally nerdy opinions, potential cursing, and plenty of love for the prequels. If any of the preceding offends you, please turn off your computer immediately, and may the Force be with you.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder!
You can't use that word! Only we can use that word!
We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
You're tuned in to the Nerf Herder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate, featuring your hosts, JT. I mean, they killed his mother. What's he supposed to do? Send him a postcard? I wish you wouldn't have done that. AJ.
I was so hoping this was going to be a family show, too.
Oh, my God. Steve.
It's our goal to be played over the loudspeakers in the bathrooms during celebration.
On this episode of the Nerf Herder Council, we do our first ever Facebook live video feed. We discuss highlights from Celebration Europe and the influence of the Legends universe on the current canon. This is the Nerf Herder Council. Welcome back to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. We are live on Facebook as we speak. I'm trying not to curse. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm your host, JT. With me are my esteemed co-hosts, AJ and Steve. And thanks to the wonders of Facebook Live, we are being filmed for all 7 people that give a crap.
And the wonders of Lego.
Yeah. I told you that we would find something, AJ. You tried to take apart an entire arm of this thing just for a stand. I'm like, there's got to be something. We're surrounded by Legos, and there it was.
I am actually super proud of that. All the time I spend building those things, and I didn't even once think that we could use the Lego to build a phone stand.
Well, don't you know that with all the Lego sets that you have, that there's always extra pieces? And with all the sets that Steve has, you have to assume that he's got extra pieces.
You know, I should have thought of that because I spent the last week trying to build a combination safe out of Lego. I found instructions for it. It's actually a pretty simple mechanism.
An actual safe with a combination built out of Legos.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you just take the Legos apart to get into it?
Because it's actually built in such a way that you can't disassemble it.
That sounds really confusing.
Basically, once you get that thing built, you better remember the combination because otherwise you're cutting the pieces apart.
Just use a hammer. I figured out the combination. It's called Craftsman. So anyhow, I figured we'd start tonight's show talking about the recently completed Star Wars Celebration Europe. For any of you who are not familiar, Celebration is the official Lucasfilm Star Wars fan convention, and this past weekend in London, England, was the second ever Star Wars Celebration Europe. And there were some newsworthy things to come out of the convention. I think the most newsworthy thing was the fact that there wasn't a lot of newsworthy things that came out of it. I don't know about you guys. I was a little disappointed. I was really expecting a lot more new stuff to be revealed, and there wasn't a lot of it.
Yeah, I thought they were going to shove Rogue One down our throats pretty big, but they just did the panel, and that seemed to be about it.
Yeah, and they didn't really reveal much in the panel. They just had the actors come out, which was cool, but there wasn't a new trailer. They had that sizzle reel, I think it's called, AJ? Is that what it is?
Yeah, it was basically behind-the-scenes stuff. The same sort of stuff they showed last year, actually.
Yeah, for
about
Episode
Force
7.
Awakens.
Yeah, but there was no new trailer, which I thought we would get. And the one thing I'm really surprised that we didn't get from that movie was any footage or even just a picture of Darth Vader, considering that's what everyone's waiting for, is to see Vader in this movie. And there was nothing relating to Darth Vader coming out of that. They didn't even mention him.
Actually, not true. Not true. This is something I wanted to bring to the table for tonight's discussion.
Really? I didn't see anything about it. So
there was a Rogue One trailer shown. However, it was only shown to attendees. So at the end of the Rogue One panel, they told everybody to turn their phones off, and then they aired the new trailer that has Vader at the end of it. Apparently, it's just a snippet. It's just a shot of his mask and him breathing. But, like we discussed on the last episode, Steve, even that would be enough for you.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what they did, but it wasn't posted online, and it wasn't for the live stream at all. They cut the live stream and put the sizzle reel back on a second time for the live stream.
Okay, see, this is something that I have a problem with. I get that they're going for secrecy and all this stuff, all the non-disclosure agreements with the actors and everything, and, our buddy Jamie from Blabba was on set, and he had to, keep his mouth shut about what he saw. Excuse me. But if they're starting to do that, even with Celebration, where you can't show anybody anything, it's starting to get a little ridiculous.
Yeah, I think they got to watch like 2 or 3 episodes of season 3 of Rebels too. That was the same thing, black room, and if you were at the panel, you saw it. No teasers to the rest of us whatsoever, other than the one with Thrawn and
that was the
new lightsaber and the new haircut for what's his name. And
well, they did that last year. That
he's
was
still annoying. I don't care.
That was the official Rebels season 2 panel. They did it last year. So they did the same thing where they showed you what was the first 2 episodes, I think, exactly the same way.
So all the cool things that are going to happen in season 3 were in that trailer?
Like
last year?
That's another question that I had. Well, as long as we're talking about that, might as well get to it. One of the other things that they revealed, honestly, some of the biggest stuff came out of the Rebels panel, because you saw, obviously, we saw the clip early, but you have the new haircut for Ezra.
Right.
He's got a green lightsaber, so that implies, he's definitely on the side of the Jedi, which the teaser trailer kind of,
Sabine's
put some
got
gray
a new
area.
haircut. Kanan has a new mask. It's like they're
what do
kind of
you guys-
retooled the look of everybody right now.
What do you guys think of that mask? I love the concept of the blind Jedi, because the only time we've ever seen that I'm aware of is General Coda in the
Right.
Force Awakens video games, but we've never actually had a character have to exist within the real world, going around without actual eyesight and just having to go on the Force. And I love the concept. I just don't know how I feel about the whole hard shell mask thing.
Yeah, that is, I'm guessing it's just an animation cheat, because it's really easy to animate a solid object instead of any eyebrows or anything. But
Right.
But then they went and drew eyes on the mask.
I noticed that too.
I'm like, that's kind of disrespectful, I think.
If you go on what Filoni said during the panel, they said the eyes kind of resemble the helmet that Rex wears. And
Oh, yeah.
and now that him and Kanan are kind of becoming friends now and stuff, instead of hating each other's guts, it's kind of like a symbolism of Kanan seeing things through Rex's eyes now.
Okay, that would make sense.
Little symbolism on that.
What if the eyes was just a practical joke by Sabine, since she likes to paint everything? She's like, check this out, I'm going to paint eyes on the blind guy. Like,
She just gives some David Prowse eyes on there.
Sabine is Snoke. That would be fantastic. That's something we would do. Yeah.
So what else happened during that panel? Sam Witwer tried his best to become Wicket. That was...
yeah,
and he was pretty solid at it.
See, I didn't actually watch that panel. I just watched the video of the teaser trailer. I watched
Right.
that and obviously the clip, but I actually didn't watch the full panel. So was there anything?
Yeah, there was a guy in the front row that was in a really solid Kanan cosplay that got to ask Filoni what was going on, and got kind of mad that he has to change his cosplay now that he's got a new helmet in season 3.
Nice. Apparently, we've been corrected on the feed. Apparently, Knights of the Old Republic had a blind Jedi. Yeah, well, we don't know that.
Have any one of us ever played those games? I have not.
No, I have not
Is Knights
either.
canon anymore?
No, not
Then
not
it
true.
doesn't matter.
Not true, because one of the things that came out of the video game panel was that they're expanding it and they're adding some stuff to it.
Right.
So
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was or not, honestly.
thanks, Alex. But yeah, I mean, I love the concept of the blind Jedi and the whole idea of it. I having like, it sounds stupid, but I think a bandana would have looked kind of more Jedi-ish than a...
Or a dirty rag like Ram Koda had.
What was
Yeah.
wrong with his look at the end of season 2, where they just had the Lobot thing with a bandage spanning the eyes.
I would have been fine with that.
Because apparently everybody is changing their look for season 3. That's why.
What if they just gave him like you said it was an animation cheat? What if they just gave him like black sunglasses and the white cane, so he's actually like an actual blind dude? That'd be awesome.
Like instead of the cane, he just turns his lightsaber upside down.
Yeah.
That's the newest lightsaber. It's a blind guy cane. He walks with it, crosses the street and everything, but then he can go right into battle just by flipping it up. You know.
So does he just use the Force to detect parking spaces? I sense I am near the entrance.
Yeah. Does the ghost get a handicap sticker now?
No, just the
missing
Phantom.
missing from the trailer is the one reason I actually care about Rebels was Ahsoka. So I don't know.
But they had the reference because wasn't Ezra yelling Ahsoka a couple times? I thought I heard that.
Did he? I don't. I only saw the trailer the one time, and that was during the panel. So
I remember him yelling for Ahsoka. So I'm like, all right, either it's like in a Force vision, or he actually sees her again, and they have to go. I don't know.
Because honestly, that would kind of annoy me. That's the one thing that's actually had me into Rebels. I really like what they've done with that character. Like, I really don't care that much about the rest of it, though.
See, my biggest question was the one that you brought up a couple minutes ago. Are they going to do the same thing with this season that they did with season 2, where all the really cool stuff is in that 3 minutes, and then all the filler stuff is just a bunch of like dumb kiddie stuff, like space whales?
Like,
and
what was
everything?
that movie like 10 years ago, like Quarantine or something? That stupid like point of view thing that like they showed like the last 2 minutes of the movie in the trailer or something like that.
Cloverfield, I think you're talking about. Was it in New York
It
City?
could have been both of them for all I know.
Something like that, yeah.
But yeah, it's like they show all the best stuff during the trailer, and then when you see it, you're like,
yeah, because I remember this teaser trailer has the feel of the season 2 one, where it seems kind of dark, and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? But then it was really just kind of a bunch of blah filler stuff for the most part.
I don't know if Dave Filoni has an actual hand in how these things are cut together, but they've been doing this since at least season 3 of the Clone Wars. Remember when way back to our first celebration in 2010, and they teased Savage Opress
With the chalk drawing.
Right. They had all that stuff going on. They debuted the trailer for the season. We're like, oh, this dude's going to be awesome. And it was like 10 episodes at least before he came into it at all. Like, it was a whole bunch of filler stuff, and then finally he shows up right at the end. They did it again for season 4, where Darth Maul, came back and then was gone for like the entire season. And then season 5, same thing. They cut this trailer with like the Mandalorian fight and Obi-Wan and the Mando armor and everything. And that is, again, like episode 16 of season 5.
Yeah.
So you had all this other crap to wait through in between. At least they learned
like
in that case, because they reorder those things sometimes in the order that they air. And based on the backlash of everyone waiting forever for Maul to do anything in season 4, they purposely picked him right back up at the beginning of season 5 instead of waiting like they did, because fans were so pissed at that.
Yeah. I loved the mid-season teaser last year when the biggest thing was Ezra cracking that lightsaber that looked like Kylo Ren's just for that to appear for an eighth of a second, where he finds it on the ground, and then the damn AAA batteries die right after he cracks the thing on. It's like, really?
I had the same reaction. I was like, "Ooh, here it is! Here, oh, come on, that's it! What? That was so stupid."
It's like a clearance rack special.
Right? Like you said, it's like the AAA batteries ran out. He had like, instead of Duracell or Energizer, he had like Rayovac in there.
Yeah.
What he didn't see was that the price tag on the back said Children's Palace. It had been laying there since the 80s.
Red Circle or whatever it was.
The only reason I make that Gold Circle, by the way.
Sorry.
The only reason I make that joke is because I was driving past the shops at Parmatown, formerly Parmatown Mall, and they've got all the facades on the plaza stripped away to like redo them. And apparently the marks used to be Children's Palace, because that's what's showing like underneath all the stuff that's torn away.
Wow.
Is the old ghosted letters. I'm like, holy crap, that takes me back now.
Wow. Well, now we do have a comment on the live feed. Did I miss this? That they said in Rogue One they're not going to have an opening crawl?
Yeah, Kathleen Kennedy, I think, pretty much confirmed that.
Well, I would like to go on record for a third time as saying that that's crap, and that is not a Star Wars movie. And I do not like that they are pulling that, because it's get ready to edit. It's
Yeah,
well,
We covered it in the last show. I really do believe Star Wars movies should have a crawl in
It
it.
has
That's
to.
just a personal feeling, though.
I mean, what are they going to do? Just have Star Wars come up on the screen and says Rogue One and then just the theme? Because now that to me sounds like they're not even going to have the theme.
Yeah, you can't do the theme without the crawl because the theme's like 54 minutes long, and if the crawl's not going through there, how are you going to play that? So
Yeah, well, that's wrong, and they're already messing it up. So I already have a problem with the whole ninjas in Star Wars, and they showed that the sizzle reel, and there's all those dudes with the bow staffs, like, and I just can't.
The one thing that seems to have definitely carried over from The Force Awakens based on the sizzle reel is they absolutely love their stunt troopers and the wire teams. Because I've never seen stormtroopers go flying around like ragdolls like we saw in TFA and upcoming in Rogue One. Like, they're just like, okay, we're going to blow the crap out of some stormtroopers because no one's ever seen that before.
Well, see, and that makes even less sense than with the stupid bow staffs, because you're going to have these guys walking around with a chunk of wood. And but you're telling us that blasters now make stormtroopers fly back like 20 feet, but some like Asian guy is going to defeat that with a stick? What? That doesn't make sense.
it's because he's a ninja.
Come on.
I'm holding out hope. I mean, it's a different weapon, and I like the fact that it's not a lightsaber versus a blaster. It's something different, but man, they're going to have to sell me on it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe we'll like it better once we see it, but I'm not. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot in that movie I think that looks cool, but some of it is really kind of I don't know.
Well, they did do something super cool as a teaser for Rogue One. They ran the episode 4 opening crawl, and when the paragraph about the Death Star comes in and centers on the screen, then the transmission scrambles and kind of like flies. The perspective changes on the wording, and it kind of like flies through the letters, and then you see the title of Rogue One come up.
All right, well,
like, that's a really cool treatment to dig right back into episode 4 and find an unaltered paragraph that perfectly summarizes the plot of your movie.
Yeah. It's going to set me off right away if we go in there and you don't get the Star Wars theme and you don't get a crawl. It's just going to feel like a second-class citizen of a movie compared to the saga films to me, because I'll be like, what the heck is this?
It's going to be a fan film.
Yeah, really. Seriously. It's going to be like Twilight or something.
Well,
like fan fiction.
It's kind of getting that way, isn't it? I mean, they're taking all these old Legends things and bringing them back into canon and rejected Macquarie concepts and stuff. I'm like, okay, when are you going to start coming up with fresh ideas instead of just digging up the B-rated footage from old Star Wars and going off of that?
Not going to happen.
Like, George said the books aren't good enough to be Star Wars, and George said that these Macquarie concepts weren't good enough to make the screen, and yet that's what we're getting.
Yeah.
When every single time we talk about the Disney purchase, I go to bat for Disney because I think they're doing the right thing with it. But I will tell you, they threw everything in the crapper except for the 6 movies at the time when they bought it, and then made Rebels, and they took everything else, threw it away, and now it is just a plethora of ideas for them to take, aka Thrawn getting thrown into season 3 of Rebels. You know, like they have so much stuff. They can pull Mara Jade out of their butts and just insert her into wherever, and it's going to be canon now. There's a picture of Starkiller on the wall behind you. They could pull him out of wherever and insert him and go, now he's canon. They have all these characters that they can just rewrite all the stories now and do what they want with it, because obviously the Thrawn trilogy was thrown away. All the books were tossed, you know, so now they can just shoehorn him into season 3 of Rebels and just now this is his story. All that stuff you guys thought you knew, it's not there. No.
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I wanted to talk about that, and I was going there before we answered the question about the crawl.
So yeah, in answer to AJ's question, no original ideas are going to come out of this for many a years until they have
right.
milked all the EU and all the stuff that they. And I'm not even, dude, I'm almost standing up for EU right now. But until they've milked that stuff dry, there won't be any new ideas.
Yeah,
like that's just the sad part.
Well, speaking of Thrawn, that might have been the biggest news that came out of Celebration in a way, was that Grand Admiral Thrawn is now actually a member of the official canon. So they pulled him out of the Thrawn trilogy, and he is shown in the promotional materials. He's on the actual season 3 poster. So they pulled him out of the EU. He's, if I'm not mistaken, the very first EU character to be featured prominently in the actual new canon. And it's very interesting to me because already they have the, what are they called? The Salamiri, the little animals that he wears that create the force bubble.
Islamari.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to pronounce it because I saw it on there today.
Katamari, that's like a Japanese PlayStation game, dude.
Calamari, Grand Admiral Thrawn, he loves Italian seafood. But they have the Islamari, and they also showed him standing in front of a bunch of like kind of ancient artwork, which is pulled from the Thrawn trilogy. Timothy Zahn, one of the new novels that'll be coming out, Timothy Zahn did a novel just called Thrawn. So basically to introduce
I think
his
it's coming
story.
out in spring or something
Is it?
like that.
Yeah, so there's that. So that'll officially be part of canon. I'm very interested to see what they do with that character because this is really going to be kind of a hot topic in the Star Wars universe because showing Thrawn means all of the EU people that are kind of disenchanted with the fact that the EU was discredited, they're going to watch Rebels to see what they do with the character. And it'll be interesting to see if they have to stick with what was in the Thrawn trilogy so that they don't piss those people off, or if they're actually going to take the character and go, okay, it's Grand Admiral Thrawn, but because this is not the Thrawn trilogy and that doesn't count, we're giving him a new story.
Well, based on what Thrawn was in the old Legends canon, they're going to have to make some adjustments right off the bat. First off, the reason Thrawn worked in the old canon, the old Legends canon, was because it was the first novel after Return of the Jedi. It was the first Star Wars book that was written, really. So, first off, there were no prequels. So anything that would have contradicted the prequels didn't matter because we didn't know anything about that. One of the central arcs of the Thrawn trilogy was the Clone Wars at that time were supposed to be a series of clones trying to replace the real people in positions of power around the galaxy. So obviously that's out the window.
Yeah.
But the cool thing was he was still a Grand Admiral. His look was still the same. He was still a Chiss is the name of the alien race. But his backstory in those books was that he was shoved out to basically the Outer Rim and out in the middle of nowhere because first he was kind of threatening to the other admirals because he was so damn good, and also because the Empire had a reputation of being very xenophobic, so only humans got promoted to the good positions.
So you're saying they did not appreciate diversity?
They did not appreciate diversity.
Call back to last week's show.
They did not appreciate an old wooden ship. So he was shoved out there on the outer reaches of the Empire when all the events of Return of the Jedi went down. So basically, it's interesting because on one hand, his subordinate in the book even wonders to himself, how would Endor have turned out if Thrawn had been there leading the fleet? And also, the reason Thrawn is now in charge of the Empire basically is because he's all that's left, because all the top-ranking officers got wiped out with the Death Star and the Executor.
Yeah.
Executor? No. What was the Superstar Destroyer's name? Was that the Avenger?
I'm drawing a blank.
I think that was the Avenger.
I think the big one was the Avenger. Or no, it was the Executor. Or is it? You know what? Real quick, is it Executor or Executor? I always wonder because it's Darth Vader's ship. Executor seems like it's an office building,
right?
But with Darth Vader, you'd swear it's the Executor, but it doesn't make sense linguistically. But anyway,
all the top people of the Empire got wiped out at the Battle of Endor, and whoever was left pretty much became the top guy. And the other thing that was cool about that, and they have actually run with this in the new canon, is that just because they lost the Battle of Endor didn't mean that the Empire crumbled overnight.
Yeah.
Like they still had, according to the book, they only had about 25% of their territory left, but they were still a power in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's pretty consistent as far as the characterization of the guy. They just have to shuffle things around because now he's not a sequel trilogy character. He's a tween trilogy character.
See, that's something interesting. Like he dies at the end of the Thrawn trilogy. Spoiler alert for anybody that wants to read it. It's actually good. But I mean, because that
That book
doesn't
came out
count,
in 1989. I'm sure it's okay.
I believe
right.
we've missed the spoiler window on that one.
right? Someone's like, I better read up on this Thrawn guy. He dies. God damn it! But because that doesn't exist, can they now keep him alive?
True.
I mean, that's and that's what I'm saying. Like, I thought he was a great character. I actually enjoyed the Thrawn trilogy. They used the word sardonic about 8,426 times, which was really annoying. But
that's Timothy Zahn.
other than that, I thought he did a really good job with it. I mean, those 3 books and Plagueis are really the only EU books that I liked. I mean, I stopped a couple other ones because I'm like, yeah, I just wasn't into it. And one of the reasons that I actually really enjoyed the Thrawn trilogy was because of Grand Admiral Thrawn. It was an interesting way to have another supervillain that wasn't just like a rehash. It wasn't a Sith Lord.
Right.
But you still had him powerful enough that he could, defeat Jedi and whatnot because, he was just that good. He was that smart in a military sense, and he had those, the Islamari, and he could protect himself, and it was really cool. But
I wonder how much Timothy Zahn knew when he wrote those books, because I heard that an early draft of The Emperor, back when Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were being made, was that the Emperor had no Force powers, and that he was just that damn smart.
I read that too.
So to have Thrawn be a non-Force user and be this powerful, I love that. It puts a very legitimate threat in the way of the Rebels for a change, instead of being, well, I'm just stronger than you in the Force, so therefore I win.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just wonder, because all the EU nuts that have boycotted the new canon, I mean, are they going to be happy that Thrawn? Are they just going to be happy with the fact that Thrawn is actually finally canon? If they change the story, are they just going to be like, all right, well, at least we got Thrawn and it's close? Or are they going to continue to throw a fit because Thrawn's in there and they change him?
Right. Like every time the Clone Wars borrowed anything from the EU, like, Moraband from Korriban and all the other stuff that they pulled in the later seasons of Clone Wars, and like Darth Bane himself was pulled from EU, and everyone's like, they were so thrilled to hear that he was coming into the show, and then the way he was depicted, they hated it.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't please him.
Yeah, it's going to be a complaint. No, unless they do Thrawn to the T of what the book showed, they're going to complain about it.
Yeah, I really think so too. I mean, they've almost painted themselves into a corner with the EU fans.
Well, by moving his position in the timeline, the EU fans already have to relax. As long as they get the characterization right, you're putting a character who's true to form into a new situation, so you can't tell the same story.
They could. I mean, they already have the Islamari and all the alien artwork that is one of the main.
Well, that's part of his character, but
yeah, but I mean, if they've already
he's not trying to rebuild the Empire and defeat the New Republic. He's trying to crush a rebellion at this point.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I guess now the question is, are we going to see him in like episode 9 or something? And then he's going to be trying to do the stuff that he was doing. I mean, are they going to borrow a lot from the EU after they said it doesn't exist? Are they going to
Thrawn is Snoke?
Yeah, right. I got to tell you, the one thing that bothers me about this is that it follows along the lines of episode 7, where, my main complaint about episode 7 is that it's like an episode 4 rehash. They didn't really bring anything original to the table. And if they start pulling EU characters and giving them stories that already existed, they're doing the same even with new characters. They're not bringing anything new.
Well, that's where I think they're safe, because they're taking a true spirited character from the books. So it's basically the same guy, but because he's not in the same situation, they're telling new stories with basically an established character. I mean, he's such a fan favorite that he seems like an instant threat, even though you don't officially know anything about him. People are very happy to just inform their own opinions based on what they've already read in the books. Yeah,
but again, him already existing and being that big, it's almost like that. Again, it's not taking a risk. It's just, remember this? Like, again, it's more of the crap where ignore the prequels and just redo what people have already said they liked. So, I mean, what's next? They're going to bring in Mara Jade.
Well, Filoni kind of
I
squashed
was
that
say
one.
not according to Filoni. So
No,
at
you
least,
know that
at
can
least
change.
at least not in Rebels anytime soon.
But
Well, you know that can change.
But okay, so they needed a new villain for season 3. They couldn't throw Vader in there again. They wanted to, especially because we're getting closer to the events of Rogue One, you've got to have Tarkin's focus be the Death Star.
Yeah.
So who are you going to put in the way of the rebels? Because Filoni even said, as you get closer to the events of Episode 4, you have to start looking more like Episode 4, which
Yeah.
means you can't have Inquisitors running around because those didn't exist then.
Yeah.
And you can't do this, you can't do that. So what can you do? Do you really have time to invent a new villain and a backstory for them and all this other stuff?
I guess that really depends on how many seasons of this show there's going to be. Because if you had time, I mean, you could, but I guess that really is kind of specific to... I mean, if you're only going to do 4 seasons and you've got 2 more seasons, like, okay, there's not really a lot of time. But if, if you're going to do like 4 or 5 more seasons, maybe you could.
See, I wonder about that because right now, Rebels ties in nicely to Rogue One. It's a nice way to tie everything together. But as soon as Rogue One is here and gone, and Episode 8 becomes the focus again, is it really going to benefit anyone to have this cartoon running that keeps the audience pulled in another direction? Like,
I mean, they could kind of have like season 4 of Rebels be the events between Rogue One and Episode 4.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
they
we don't know for a fact that Rogue One butts right up to the beginning of Episode 4, so there might be some space in there. But otherwise, what are you going to have? Like a concurrent storyline that runs through the events of A New Hope?
They basically make it where the end of Rogue One, like they get the Death Star plans, but then it takes them like 6 years to get them anywhere to do anything with it. That's how they shoehorn in some time to make other Star Wars stories.
As long as there's people watching the show, they'll find a way to keep dragging it out. Like
Yeah,
I
right.
said, it's going to be like an episode of 24. We'll come to find out that these first 2 seasons of Rebels were just 2 days.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a week.
Yeah.
That's why we didn't see Rex
It's the
very much
world's
in
longest
season 2.
roller coaster. You're only on the first hill, bitch.
Rex was just on vacation for 3 days.
Yeah.
But the whole thing occurred over like an 8-day
Apparently,
period.
clones age very rapidly.
Right? It's part of the cloning process, man. It's bad DNA. But yeah, no, I think it's going to be cool to have Thrawn in there. I just think it'll be interesting to see what the EU fans actually think of what they do with him, and whether or not it'll get them more viewership. That's another thing I wonder. I wonder because people are kind of lukewarm to Rebels right now. I mean, people like it, but there's been a lot of stuff out there about how, you know, the last few seasons of Clone Wars are better and everything. And I wonder if they did this as kind of a hook to try and increase viewership.
It could be. Unfortunately, even with the character model upgrades that are coming for Season 3, it's still painfully obvious that this show is being made for a much smaller budget than Clone Wars. The artistry just isn't there like it was because the budget's not there to spend that much time.
It's just not as, again, it's too. I like it. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little too kiddie-ish for me. You know, like we were joking about the episode with the space whales and stuff. I mean, it's like, come on, really? You couldn't do something else?
Space whales, force trees, whatever.
Force cows. No, but
Those aren't just space whales. Those are hyperspace whales. Whales that can travel the speed of light. Sure. Okay.
well, they can do whatever they want, I suppose.
Well, it's following in the proud tradition of Fantasia 2000 where humpback whales can now just fly into space anyway, so...
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, I was really surprised that more didn't come out of Celebration. Although there was a really funny moment in the Mark Hamill panel. I watched that one, and he didn't have a moderator. It was just him talking.
Yeah.
So it was.
I love that.
Yeah, it was cool, and it was almost exclusively just audience questions. And some guy, what did he ask him? He asked him some question about the other characters, I think it was, and Mark Hamill was joking, and he's like, "Yeah, you know, Daisy Ridley's character. What's her name? what's her name? And so, people, Ray goes, oh, yeah, Ray. And the guy goes, what's her last name? And he opened his mouth, and you could tell for a split second he was about to spit out Ray's last name. And so this guy in the audience almost caught him with by giving away the ultimate spoiler. That it was, and he stopped. He goes, "Oh, that was good. That was good." I would have laughed. If he would have given that away. That would have been hysterical. The whole, that's like, like if people would have found out in 1980, like 2 months before Empire comes out, that Vader is Luke's father. Oh, what? That would have been awesome. But
that happened in the Rogue One panel actually. That the Donnie Yen, I think, was the actor's name.
Okay.
I forget. One of the non-English speaking actors, he speaks English, but it's very bad English. It's not his native language. He might have slipped and mentioned one of the characters that dies in the movie. There's a transcript, and he uses the word dead, talking about his character's friendship with another character for the Rebels and how it changes his character's path. And Gwendolyn Christie is a moderator, and she steps in like, that's enough. I think you said enough. It's time. Okay, that's it. And kind of like shut down the panel immediately. And Kathleen Kennedy was on the stage for it too. So that dude is seriously in some deep poodoo right now.
You better hope he got all of his paychecks.
Right.
He violate that non-disclosure agreement. It's like you're gonna get whacked or something. It's like the mafia anymore.
Maybe there's a new round of reshoots where it just cuts that whole character out.
Right. That's exactly what it was for. They did reshoots for this character and his death, and now they're just going to go back and reshoot and keep that guy alive and let the other dude die. Make a new spoiler out of it. But yeah, all in all, I was just really surprised that there wasn't more that came out of Celebration Europe, and it was kind of like that with the first Celebration Europe too. Remember, it was just kind of like a junior version of Celebration. And this was kind of more of the same. I really expected more stuff to come out of it. I mean, even something as simple as like the video game panel, like they talked about Visceral's video game, which still they haven't really said much about, except for it might be a Han Solo like shooter. But even stuff like they teased the next update to Battlefront, and where are you on that one, Steve?
I can't play through the computer because of
where's our
Facebook right
bumper?
now.
Back to the front. But they said they were gonna like show a teaser for the next update, which is in September for the Death Star level, and all it was like a cutscene of basically like a video game version of the battle over Endor in space. So there wasn't anything showing the actual maps or gameplay. I'm like, well, who cares about that? We know it's in the Death Star. What good was that? So,
well, I mean, what else are you expecting? The previous DLC is only a month old.
yeah, but if you're going to say, oh, we're going to show you something, I mean, everyone wants to play in the Death Star or around the Death Star. It's like you want to see what it looks like. You want to see what the map looks like. Like, are you running through the halls? Like, I mean, are you running out by where the laser is, and can you fall over where there's no railing, as we've talked about before? Right.
Well, they've got to have the detention center. I mean, if you can't run through those hallways and hopefully down into the trash compactor, that would be awesome.
Well, they do stuff like that. I mean, they had, in Jabba's palace, they had the Rancor pit,
right,
with the dead Rancor and stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm sure they'll have little Easter eggs like that. But
yeah, and then the battle outside the Death Star, of course, you can do the trench run. So, I mean, it's everything you'd expect. My only issue with that actually is the scale of the video game is actually larger than the battle was in the movie. So when you've got a 20 on 20. Or, more than that in the case of AI bots, too. You've got more ships in the video game than ever existed in the actual battle as depicted in the film.
I never thought of it that way, but that's very true.
Like, they're showing all this chaos and all these ships blowing up. I'm like, dude, you had, like, one every 4 minutes getting blown out of the sky in the movie, and this is just going to be nonstop chaos.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess it has to be that way, because if it was more true to the film, it would be a very boring video game to play.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But actually, and of course, they announced the Rogue One Scarif, the tropical planet, is going to be the fourth DLC to come out, and they said probably December, I think, like probably right around the time that the movie drops.
Yeah.
So that one's actually going to be I guess
probably
that's right
be
on
like they did last year and drop it like 2 weeks before the movie comes out or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be cool. You'll get new trooper classes and, of course, characters from the movie. But I don't know. I still don't know about having stormtroopers on the beach. That's kind of weird.
Yeah, like here's the official poster, and it looks like a beach movie. I was like, see, this is not playing into
Right, we got, like-
feeling like a Star Wars movie.
What is it, like 5-on-5 with 2 X-Wings swooping overhead? That's it?
Yeah,
Like, wow.
and the Death Star in the background looks so big. It's like it looks like the planet ran into it.
Right.
Like I said, I'm sure that movie will be really cool, but just right now, it kind of looks like something that, like, okay, are they pushing the limits of what you're going to enjoy as a Star Wars movie?
Right, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. So, well, the good thing is, speaking of that, though, they did talk about the Han Solo movie, and supposedly a lot of people are saying that the script for that movie is like the best script for any Star Wars movie ever. They're just saying it's like that people will really get into the story.
I think they've said that before.
Yeah, true.
I believe that was Force Awakens as well.
Yeah, right. It was funny to me because, Steve, you were tweeting at me like, oh, they announced the new Han Solo. I was like, what do you mean they announced the new Han Solo? That was online 2 months ago who this guy was. Oh, but now it's official.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of their big reveals was, here's the actor. Everybody in the crowd's like, yeah, so we already knew that. And?
Well, it's like when they said that Vader was going to be in Rogue One. Everyone's like, yeah.
Well,
James Earl Jones is already confirmed to have done his lines. I mean,
at least that one was a little closer between the two pieces of news. This has been like a couple months. This would be like going to Celebration last year and them going, hey, guess what? Luke and Han and Leia are in the movie.
Right.
Everyone's like, we already knew that. So, but I wanted to kind of bring something to the table that you and I have discussed, because I was looking up articles today and, of course, pissing myself off because of all the prequel hate that I was finding.
The usual.
Yeah, but I saw something mentioned on a website in relation to episode 3 that was an argument that you and I actually got into. So I'm interested to see Steve's opinion on this. It's in relation to the Palpatine Yoda lightsaber fight at the end of episode 3. And on this article, this guy had like 5 things he hated about episode 3, 5 things that he loved. And one of the things that he hated was that lightsaber battle. And I know you and I discussed it and completely disagreed. Steve, my take is, I thought it was great. The basis for AJ's argument is that for two guys that are that powerful in the Force, they shouldn't be just banging away at each other with lightsabers. And my take is, well, eventually it's going to get like it was at the end of episode 2 with Dooku and Yoda, where they're just throwing crap at each other and deflecting it, like standing there like a couple of dummies. You got to do something.
Maybe it's some type of old school Jedi like respect thing that they, were doing it with the sabers instead of referring to the Force powers instead.
Did you have a problem with that they had that? Because
I didn't have a problem with it. It seemed like it was just filler, because really the end game of that was nothing. So, I mean, you could have really not even had that in there and had the rest of the story still come out the same way.
I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it as filler, but yeah, it really resolved nothing. See, I loved it. I thought it was really cool because we already know that they're so powerful in the Force. We already know that they can, levitate things and influence people and all that stuff. But to, see, I mean, you'd already seen like Yoda. What are we doing now?
Facebook comments.
Oh boy. But, I mean, to see the Emperor finally fighting with, a lightsaber was really cool. Kind of like how you first saw Yoda against Dooku in episode 2. So, but your opinion, AJ, is that it kind of detracted from their characters.
Yeah. It brought
Why?
them down to the level of the Jedi Knights. Once you achieve mastery, then you shouldn't need that anymore. Like, I like the way that the fight started. Yoda walks in, and just there goes the Royal Guards.
That was cool.
And what happens next? Sidious throws lightning at him. All right, we're off to a good start. These are things that normal Jedi can't do.
Okay.
And then they whip out their lightsabers, and we're back to normal Jedi fighting. Like, come on. First off,
It's not a Star Wars movie without.
You had Obi.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, actually. But you already had Obi-Wan and Anakin going at it. So the way they intercut those two fights, you didn't need lightsabers in both. I thought it would have been a lot cooler if they had found some other way for Yoda and Palpatine to fight Like when I threw the Senate at him. The whole Senate. Like, yeah, that was
it come out of my nose.
like, okay, so Dooku's collapsing a column, but no, Palpatine's flinging entire Senate pods. Like, okay, that's cool. I'm on board with that. But the lightsaber thing, Obi-Wan and Anakin are supposed to be the lightsaber guys. They do all the fighting with lightsabers. Let's see the masters do other stuff.
See, but I liked it.
I think they might have just been trying to shoehorn Yoda and lightsaber work into the movie somehow.
Because it was so popular in episode 2?
Yeah.
No, I mean, could be. See, I liked it because...
That maybe the Emperor, too, because, he was supposed to be such a master swordsman and stuff, too.
That's the
but,
thing.
You've seen him use it once in Clone Wars and then in episode 3, and that's it.
Yeah, it's something you hadn't seen. So everyone knows that he doesn't need to use a lightsaber. He's got all those crazy force powers and stuff.
It's kind of like the same thing we're waiting for with Mace Windu, how he's supposed to be like the world's greatest lightsaber master, and we've seen him behead Jango Fett, and that's the only time you've seen him crack his lightsaber, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I thought it was cool because, it's okay, well, can he use a lightsaber? Like, what if what he's going to do all this crazy force lightning, but then someone comes at him with a lightsaber, he's like, crap, and just gets cut down. Like, I think I thought it was cool to see that he can use all aspects of the force and was still, even though he's like this decrepit old man, like he draws on the dark side to do all these crazy moves and, jump off of stuff and this, that, and the other. I loved it. I thought it was cool. And I get what you're saying about, you already had Anakin and Obi-Wan using lightsabers, but I thought it was a cool juxtaposition because it was like, one versus the other. It was kind of like, they were all just, in order to kill each other, they were all so powerful, they had to go down to the most base levels of the Force and just, end it with a duel, because they couldn't. And like you said, it was cool. Like they're throwing Senate pods, but what else is it? What else is in there to throw? I mean, what else are they going to do? It's a room full of Senate pods. What's going to happen next?
At least one of those lightsabers didn't crack out like Ezra's.
Right. Wouldn't it be great if that's how one of the lightsaber battles ended in one of these things? Like the Kyber crystal just all of a sudden gets defective. They're in the middle of this like unbelievable battle. All of a sudden, one of them just goes, and he looks at it, he's like, oh crap, and then the other guy just cuts him in half. Be the most anticlimactic end to a battle ever. That would be fantastic.
Just starts hitting it like.
Yeah. Hollers out, time out, time out. The other guy just puts his away.
He's got to go put his lightsaber hilt in the freezer and see if you could get a charge in the battery again.
That would be so great. But
middle of the lightsaber battle, he sticks his tongue out and like, oh, okay, we're good. We're good.
All right, it's back. I knew I should have bought the rechargeable kind. But yeah, I just thought it was cool because it was, that as masters they're that powerful. And again, you already saw Yoda and Dooku doing the, we can push each other and we can throw rocks at each other and rip stuff off the wall. It's like, that they can do that, but you haven't seen the Emperor do that. It was just an additional thing that you see from his character, which you assume he can do, but it's just cool to see it on the screen.
But the fact that, actually, Mace did hold his own for a good while there compared to the 3 little bitches that he brought with him, which pissed me off because, Kit Fisto's my favorite Jedi. Yeah. He just went down like a punk.
That is one of my few complaints about Episode 3 is like, those guys just basically stood there when they walked in, and Palpatine's like, and they're gone. Like, oh, come on, really?
Right. I understand there's a little bit of shock value because you don't expect this Sith Lord dude to all of a sudden be like, hey, I got a lightsaber, corkscrew at you. Like, okay, I get it. But
it was almost like Kit Fisto the Jedi was just like Kit Fisto the actor in real life because he's a total surfer dude. So it was almost like Kit Fisto walked in the room and Palpatine whips out a lightsaber and goes, bro, he's got a lightsaber, man. Oh, I'm dead. Like,
yeah.
it was so anticlimactic, but anyway.
Kit
at least
Fisto
he was
Spicoli. What?
right?
At least he was the last of the three punks to fall.
Yeah.
Agent Kolar and Stacey Tin got theirs first.
Yeah, and it was really poor, too, because the one guy gets it. The other guy should have, at that point, been on defense, but he wasn't. He was like, it was like Monty Python.
Right.
Where the dude's running up and it takes forever, and then he stabs the guy and runs into the castle, and the guy turns around and goes, hey. It was like that total just delayed reaction. I'm like, come on, man. But anyway, so you were saying.
Yeah, so at least that happened. Mace kind of held his own, but I still feel like Palpatine didn't do enough. I mean, that lightsaber battle between Mace and Palpatine really sucked. Because, I mean, well, there's only so much you can do. I understand they had a double for Christopher Lee in doing Episode 2 because obviously that dude couldn't move. But whoever was doing the stunt work for Ian McDiarmid in number 3, I mean, even on the close-ups, it was just a really lightsaber battle.
Well, the close-ups were actually Ian McDiarmid. That's why you have that goofy look on his face where he's like
yeah.
It was actually him in the close-ups, but then it was a double. They did the same thing like they did with Christopher Lee in Episode 2. They had the double in Episode 3 for him.
Yeah, but that whole fight, like, okay, Mace Windu is supposed, based on what Palpatine was doing, except for the crazy corkscrew to start everything off,
Yeah.
his moves were so lame.
Yeah.
Why Mace would have had any trouble with him whatsoever, I can't figure it out.
It almost would have been better to now that we're talking about it, it almost would have been cooler if they reversed the venue for the Palpatine Yoda fight and the Palpatine Mace Windu fight. Because if you have Yoda and Palpatine in the office, then they could use the Force. There's more stuff to move around and block, and it's a smaller area, so you know. But if you put Mace Windu and Palpatine in the Senate, there's a lot more room for them to jump around and do cooler stuff. And since Mace Windu is supposed to be this crazy swordsman, it might be kind of cooler to see him jumping around, and you know. So maybe that would have been something.
Actually, based on our discussion, something you mentioned a little while ago, what I would have loved to have seen was in Episode 2 to have Dooku and Mace Windu square off.
Yeah. That's that is one of my complaints about the prequels, and I love the prequels, as everybody knows.
No,
There really wasn't enough Mace Windu, like you brought this up, just kicking ass. That would have been sweet to have that one monster, like super long fight with him just beating the hell out of people, and they never showed it.
He needed at least one good one. I mean, he's second in charge of the Jedi Council. He's that important, and he was a new character. Yoda didn't need so much screen time to legitimize him because we already knew Yoda.
Yeah.
If you want to introduce a new second in charge person to the Jedi Council, then you need to see more of that character.
Yeah.
And I always thought, and I talked about this before, I thought Mace was always a little too angry to be a good Jedi to begin with. So let's see him do more Jedi-y things. Like, if he's not going to be the peaceful guy who's solving problems for the universe, then let's make him the most badass swordsman you've ever seen.
Make him actually Sam Jackson as a Jedi.
Right. Right, exactly. I want to see...
Say what again?
Because I'm still holding out hope that somewhere along the line he gets his own standalone movie or something.
That would be a great standalone movie to show. Because that's it's like kind of like we talked about before, that Qui-Gon Jinn would be a pretty cool standalone movie. Mm-hmm. Because it's a cool character that you don't know much about, that whenever they were on the screen fighting, or it was just an interesting character.
And that's pre-prequel too, with him. So it would, you could kind of go in whatever direction you want with that one. Whereas Mace, you kind of have to have a very basic start and end point.
You think?
Well,
I mean, he's pre-prequel too.
You could really
I guess he could go pre-prequel because he was already in power before we saw him. So
you could really do one of these Star Wars stories that actually spans before Episode 1 and then into the years before Episode 2. You could really run it between, because you could cover the whole Sifo Dyas thing, the creation of the clone army, Dooku's defection, all that stuff.
See, and that's another thing that sucks about Disney mandating that just ignore the prequels, because there's so many cool stories that you could tell. Mm-hmm. And just because there's all
and maybe they haven't, though. I mean, maybe they just haven't gotten that far yet because all their eggs went into
like we
the
said,
new
that
movies.
That one writer guy in his panel like a month ago came out and said that one of the things Disney said in the pre-production for Episode 7 was, nothing prequels, no prequel. So that's why we haven't seen anything about it. And it really sucks, man. I went back and because we talked about Episode 1 on last week's show, I went back and rewatched Episode 1. I hadn't watched it in a while. And I still really like it. I like the story because it's so different from the original trilogy. It's just a much more dense storyline. There's multiple things going on, which also lends itself to having more stories branch off of it that you could tell. Like we just talked about, Mace Windu, Qui-Gon Jinn,
Ben Quadinaros.
Right. They make a Star Wars story about all the crappy pod racers.
Gasgano, yeah.
And it all leads up to the Boonta Eve Classic where they all die.
One of the Star Wars stories
Best death
movies
cry
is
ever.
nothing
Right.
is nothing but like a pod racing like God, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like
You sleep deprived bastard, spit
yeah,
it out.
I know. Instead of just like a movie, like they're following the guys around like a stupid
Like
ESPN
a reality show?
30 on 30
Yeah,
kind
it's a
of
Star
thing.
Wars 30 for 30 behind pod racing. Yeah,
Like you said, just building up from the old black and white footage of like the early pod racers, like
which
like,
is on Banthas.
yeah, like old school, like like every year when the Indy 500 airs and they start like rolling out all that old like 1920s footage of them racing on the beach and stuff like that, and the cars
Right.
like sinking into the sand and stuff like that, like
You just have them riding Banthas. That was like the earliest pod racing. It's just like a bunch of huge, fat, hairy elephants kind of meandering through the sand, and just weird aliens beating the shit out of them with sticks, like to get them to move like 0.04 miles an hour faster.
Then the Tauntauns were the next great technological leap.
Yeah, they moved them to Hoth because they were faster, and then they realized they could actually use vehicles, and then it was on from there to the Boonta Eve Classic. But
all ending with the Boonta Eve Classic.
Racers, start your Tauntauns.
oh my god, would that guy that blew up if like one of his species fell off a tauntaun and died in the snow as he was falling, would he go roar? And then you have the other guy like falling into
Michael
the
Bay
snow.
explosion after he
Right.
falls off the
Right.
tauntaun.
The Wilhelm scream as he's going down. And then you have the other guy, like he falls off his tauntaun and it dies and he's kicking. And he goes, "Oh no!"
Steve, how are we a Star Wars podcast and don't have the Wilhelm scream on a hotkey?
Yeah, that's what we have to.
Because we have nothing on hotkeys.
Yeah, what's a hotkey? Closest thing we have on a hotkey is the hot dog in the Lego Boba Fett's hand.
Perfect. Yes. Oh, dude, he's sleeping.
Yeah,
he's sleeping. He fell down on the job.
Yeah, you knocked him over.
Oh,
But
slacker.
yeah, no, there. I mean,
Oh, no.
Yeah, oh no. Now when Boba Fett,
ouch! That's gotta hurt. I don't care what universe you're from.
yeah.
That's gotta hurt.
oh man, but yeah, I mean, there's so many cool stories that they could tell that it's
There you
just
go.
being
He's working
ignored.
again.
He's back up. Is he back on the grill?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Boba's back on his feet.
feet, Bob, a feet, whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's so many stories that they could tell that they're just ignoring,
Yeah.
and
Now, I don't know. That might be thawing a little bit. I heard that George Lucas was actually on the set of Rogue One. Like, he was in London for something else and was invited to visit. And
Gareth
he did.
Edwards said that. Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean, I get why he didn't visit the set of Force Awakens, because they threw his script out allegedly because it had too many nods to the prequels, too many prequel references. So that was
Okay.
the big split, and that's how it started. But maybe now things are thawing out a little bit.
I hope so. In watching episode 1 again, it just reinforced my belief that episode 7 just does not feel like 1 through 6. There's just something fun about the original 6 that's just not quite there in episode 7, and it's just a different feel.
I think it would do them well if George Lucas wants to be on as a consultant and kind
Yeah.
of look at the stuff and be like, okay, well, here's where I would do it differently. They could at least use that as a jumping board to try to get that tone back on course. Because I'm with you. I feel like the new stuff is either derivative of rejected ideas, which is their nod to say, look, it's real Star Wars. We're starting from the real stuff. Or it's just, there's just something missing there. Like, the only stuff that even resonates in the slightest bit is all the stuff that came from old unused ideas.
Yeah.
Every time they introduce their own idea to it, it's what pulls it off course.
Well, if you remember, initially when Disney bought Lucasfilm and the whole idea of, 2 more trilogies came out, when they first started talking about episode 7, they said that it was reported that he was going to be like a creative consultant.
Yeah, he had a credit on the film originally.
Yeah.
I don't think he's anywhere in the credits except for based on characters created by.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was it.
Yeah, he said that, they basically scrapped his story and that the story that he wrote was totally different from what they did. Mm-hmm. And so for that reason he wasn't a fan of it, but he wanted to watch it as a, from as an outsider would see it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, just having him there going, okay, this is Star Wars, that idea is not Star Wars, just kind of shape it just a little bit. Because I mean, it's just he's got that his absence, I think, is what causes episode 7 to not really feel like a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, the closest thing that I can relate it to is the 6th Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book. It was written by
going into obscure stuff now.
Well, it was written by a guy named Ian Colfer after Douglas Adams died.
Steve. Nice.
You asshole.
So Ian Colfer.
Anyway, yeah, so basically, okay, I'll give you the short version so we don't lose our third host here.
Yeah, right.
But basically Douglas Adams himself admitted that he kind of ran out of steam on the 5th book and didn't like the way he ended the saga.
Okay.
So he had a rough outline and was starting work on a 6th book to finish it up in a better way.
Okay.
And he died.
Yeah.
So then Ian Colfer picked up the notes from that and wrote the book.
Okay.
And yeah, the characters are in it and the humor is the same style, but it's off by a little bit. You could tell it's like, wasn't there... Beethoven or one of those classic composers had an unfinished symphony and then his apprentice finished it.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Maybe it was Mozart. I
right.
think,
It's one of those. It's one of those where it starts from the original creator and then someone else picks it up from there. And
yeah.
It's similar but not the same.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just there's so many people online when they're defending episode 7 that say, when the topic of George Lucas being involved comes up, oh, George Lucas would have ruined this movie, and I can't get on board with that, and the same way I can't get on board with the blind hero worship for episode 7 by all the prequel haters, because you have to come into this at least looking at it honestly.
It's because everybody crapped on George with the prequels, and that was the last thing he did, so automatically everyone assumed if he worked on 7, it was going to be the same stuff that nobody was going to like, and that's where the blind love came from, because they were like, yay, George didn't do it, so it's automatically
I just
awesome.
don't understand
Well, that's crap, too, because George Lucas was the one who put Clone Wars out. It was his idea to have Ahsoka be a character at all in the first place, and now she's a beloved fan favorite.
Yeah.
Like everyone, like you were saying, the best part about season 2 was getting more Ahsoka. I mean, would you ever have said that in 2008 when the show came out? No one would have thought that, fast forward 8 years and we're like, I really missed that character.
right? Yeah, I didn't like her. I didn't. Mm-hmm. I just maybe it's these things age better.
And same as episode 1. We all kind of hate Jar Jar, but you know what? We'll watch Jar Jar in episode 1 now because there's still something that ages well about it.
It's nostalgic almost in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about it watching it the other day, and I mean, that movie is 17 years old. God. Can you believe that?
Holy crap. No, I did not realize that.
Yeah, I mean, 17 years old. And I mean, and I watched a DVD version because my Blu-rays are on loan to one of my bandmates. Mm-hmm. And you can definitely tell the difference in the visual quality of a DVD and a Blu-ray, which I didn't realize until now. But it really the DVD almost made it cooler because it smooths over some of the edges, whereas the Blu-ray you can see every last detailed line, and so it wasn't as defined on DVD, and it was really cool. It was like watching an old movie. It felt like when back in '99, going back and watching episode 4, 5, and 6 because it was like, ooh, this is an older movie. It's so cool. I remember this. It's like, so I think there's this nostalgic thing with it now. And I mean, I like we talked about on our episode 2 show a couple episodes ago. Episode 1 is aging pretty well. I mean, it seems like people's opinion on it is really softening.
I hate to trump up what Disney keeps trumpeting, but the use of physical effects, I think that helps it a lot.
Yeah.
That was the last one shot on film, not digital.
Yeah, true.
And it used a lot more practical. People want to rip on the CGI, but there were a lot more practical effects and practical sets in that than 2 or 3 had.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's why it ties in so well, because it has the same movie-making techniques as the original trilogy. So it's just visually much more in there.
I was watching it with kind of like an eye for stuff that you could. Obviously, Jar Jar is one of those things where you just go, "Oh my god, that's like cringeworthy" in a lot of spots, and the dialogue is bad in spots. But I mean, the actual story itself. I mean, if you changed the dialogue in spots to actually not be cheesy dialogue, it really is not too bad at all. I mean, some of the lines are delivered weird because they're written strangely, but you know, I mean, I don't know. I just think George Lucas did a great job, and I don't understand all the George Lucas hate. In doing show prep today and looking up all these articles in the comments section, there's all these people, you know, again with the George Lucas raped my childhood and this, that, and the other, and no, he didn't. Like, you wouldn't have any of this if it wasn't for him. Mm-hmm. I don't, I mean, it's like the Metallica argument. I mean, they're horrible now, but you can't really disrespect them because without, they created those first 5 records. And you have to have respect for that. I mean, so it's the same thing with George Lucas. I mean, he gave us Star Wars. You can't disrespect the guy who made Star Wars. We wouldn't have something to debate if it wasn't for George Lucas. Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't good in the first place, people wouldn't be so passionate about it as to hate it or love it or debate it or have a podcast about it.
Right?
Just so you know, John, as soon as you started defending episode 1, the viewers went into the toilet, man.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. We actually did. We've lost over half the audience.
That's okay. But
here's one of the drawbacks of Disney's whole anti-prequel stance. You look at the stories they're putting out and where they're putting them in the timeline, and sequel trilogy is wide open, of course, because that was never touched to begin with. So, okay, I get that part. But because they're trying to distance themselves from the prequels but still tie in, now we've got Rebels and Rogue One all taking place between 3 and 4. Yeah. And all these books that are coming out to support that, and the comics. And it feels like they're over-bloating a time period in the saga that was supposed to be kind of a lull. Like, it made perfect sense before they started telling these stories to just assume, you know what, everything was kind of laying low, the Empire was spreading, and no one was doing anything about it yet. It was just a recovery period from the shock of the galactic Civil War.
Yeah.
And there wasn't anyone powerful enough to challenge the Empire yet. That was good. I was good with that. Now they're telling all these stories, and we're like, okay, if all this crap was taking place between these 2 movies, don't you think we would have heard about it before now? That's one of the reasons I'm having a hard time swallowing all this and getting into Rebels, because I'm like, it's too much story to have been ignored this long.
Well, but
that, and you figure there'd be some type of knowledge of it once you get to episode 4,
right?
That they bring up these rebels, that they had to deal with before the events of episode 4. But that movie is basically like the start of all time. There's no acknowledgement backwards at all, almost. So
yeah, mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, the opening crawl even says the rebels have scored their first major victory over the Empire. Okay, well, what about all these times that the rebels are blowing stuff up or escaping or liberating a planet or all the stuff that happens in the cartoon? Like, those aren't major victories, apparently?
Yeah.
The next re-release of A New Hope is going to have a totally different scroll at the beginning of it.
Yeah. I'm almost afraid of that, really.
The rebels have scored their 174th major victory over the Empire.
You just see whiteout on the scroll.
Right? Man, I don't
The rebels, led by Jyn Erso, have scored their first major victory over.
Right? Yeah, I don't really have a problem with it, because I think, with the Clone Wars, it happened between episodes 2 and 3, and that was only a couple year time period. So, I mean, it's pretty similar. I mean, the time period between episode 3 and 4 is what, like 17 years or something, 18 years, something like that.
They're only covering the last 5, they've still got those other 12 to play with if they want to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of time in there to work with. So if you really want to think about it, there's more time to, like you just said, there's more time to work with. There's more time to work with than there was between episodes 2 and 3, and they did a good job with that. So I mean, there's more area to explore. But I think I would agree with your point by saying that they're not looking at those other like 12 years. You know, they're really in just like this little tiny time period right now. So it's like there's all this stuff going on. It's like, okay, well, what about all the rest of the time you're not telling us about?
And well, they're covering it in books and stuff and comics, but there's still plenty of time between 6 and 7 if they want to go in that direction too.
Yeah, and the whole book thing is, I mean, how many people are really going to read that? I mean, it's big nerds like us are going to read it, but I mean, the casual fan that just, I mean, there's people that aren't even going to go. There's casual Star Wars fans that might not even see Rogue One.
There's casual Star Wars fans that don't know that there's Star Wars books. They think it's just the movies and the TV shows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of people that might not even see Rogue One because they're just waiting for Episode 8, you know, to your point, Steve. So to put all this stuff in books and everything is interesting, but it's almost something that would be better to put into Rebels or a live action television show or more movies or something, because I mean the books, I mean, if they're going to put some major plot points in these books, I mean that's treading a thin line.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're using the Marvel formula when it comes to movies. Like they just got the next one in the pipeline and they're weaving this giant cinematic story.
Yeah.
But even the MCU is only the MCU. It's not like they're going and saying, okay, well, now we're going to write comic books that support it. And the TV shows do support it. More so, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ties in, but otherwise, the other Marvel series like Jessica Jones and Daredevil, they just kind of stay out of its way. Like they purposely tell these smaller stories in the TV shows that aren't going to interfere with anything going on in the cinematic level. So Star Wars is the first time that they've really tried to look at all forms of media and tell stories in all of them that all relate.
Yeah, and if they're basing it off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think the problem that they're going to run into, and probably already are, is that with the MCU, all those comic books existed, so you had all the storyline. Then they just got to pick the really cool parts to put in the movies.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Wars is kind of doing the comic books and stories while they're making the movies, so it's okay, you know, it's not this huge established thing for like 80 years, and then it's like, okay, well, remember all these really cool parts that were in the comic books? Well, now we're going to put them in the movies. It's, you know, they're kind of doing it all at the same time,
or backwards even, where they'll put out, you know, the climax is the movie, and then later on they're like, okay, and here's some comics that talk about stuff that you already saw.
There's so much
like
stuff
Aftermath.
you have to get a hold of to know everything about what's going on in the Star Wars universe. Like it's getting to the point that if you're like not following them on Twitter, you could like miss a plot point for some reason.
Yeah,
because they'll be like, oh yeah, well that plot point was released 5 days ago on Twitter and then it was deleted an hour later. So if you didn't see it,
right?
Seriously, Pablo Hidalgo would do like a random Q&A sometimes and just fill in little details. Well, it's ridiculous.
The sucky thing about the novels is that they almost don't matter, because they're going to put everything you need to know in the movies.
Right, they can't matter.
Yeah, and so the books are just going to show you the little details in between. But if all you really need to get the full story, or at least the gist of the story, is the movies, then the average fan's not going to read those books. And to me, that's why to me it's just another EU, because it's like, all right, well, if it's not worthy to put in the movie, then it's just kind of, all right, who cares? Why should I? I mean,
right? It's basically EU that doesn't interfere with the main stuff.
Yeah, like I mean, like the new book, Life Debt, Aftermath. I mean, first of all, I keep reading online that the first Aftermath book just isn't good.
True.
And now they want me to read a story about how Han Solo freed the Wookiees. I don't give a damn about that. Like, what does that do for me to know that Han Solo freed the Wookiees? And going even further, does that really need to be told? That just seems like one of those things, like when people complain about shoehorning certain plot points in there as fan service. Isn't that kind of like a fan service thing? Just like because Han Solo's friends with Chewbacca, it had to be Han Solo that freed the Wookiees. Like, because he's friends with Chewbacca. Okay, well, okay. Like, do we need to know that? Or, I mean, is it important? No.
I'm not sure because I haven't read that book yet, but I can give you my experience from Bloodline, which is very Leia-centric, but absolutely, it's almost like the Darth Plagueis of the sequel trilogy, where it picks up about, I think they've said somewhere between 10 and 15 years before Force Awakens.
Okay.
Ben is still training with Luke at the Jedi Academy when the story takes place, but it does cover the political climate of the sequel trilogy, the rift in the New Republic, and also the beginning of the First Order and the formation of the Resistance, all in that book. So if you want to know exactly why there is no more rebellion and empire and all that stuff, and who these other new factions are, it covers it right in this book.
Okay. I mean, some of that stuff you want to know, but again, I mean, stuff like Life Dad, I don't need to know. I mean, one of the recurring complaints that I see about Episode 3 and that people don't like is how they made Yoda be friends with Chewbacca.
Right.
And they have the tearful goodbye. I saw that a lot of times today because, like, you know, do you have to combine these character stories just because, oh, remember Chewbacca? You love him. Remember Yoda?
Wait. That was a tarful goodbye.
Oh, man.
I never thought I'd get to use that name in a joke. I'm proud of myself. Barry Horowitz, thank you.
Extra credit on that one. Slam the rock. Nice. No, but I mean, if people are complaining about, you know, a scene that takes up like 20 seconds of screen time, what does that? Do you then need an entire novel? Going, oh, well, because Han Solo and Chewbacca are friends, that must mean that Han Solo freed the Wookiees, and here's an entire 350-page book about it. I mean, no.
I'll give it a pass on this. He's a general as of Return of the Jedi, so some general's probably going to lead the charge on Kashyyyk. Might as well be Han, I guess.
Yeah, but again, do you really care?
Although, what the hell was Dodonna doing? You know, when's that guy going to earn a paycheck? He's sitting back there stroking his beard like, you got this one.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what Han Solo's for. I'm close to retirement. But yeah, like again, the novels now are almost seeming like it's like a new EU. It's just that it counts. Like I'll read the Thrawn book because I was really interested in that character, so I'll read that one.
That's so meta if you think about it. Like,
yeah,
books were written, which influenced a cartoon, which caused a book to be written. Mm-hmm. It's like when you go into the toy aisles and you see Lego Minecraft.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so a building toy inspired a digital building game, which now has the building toy creating physical toys of the digital building game.
Right?
Got it.
Right?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I just think they're going to have to start telling stories in the novels if they want them to matter. They're really going to have to start telling stories that you actually care about and that are actually going to matter a little bit more. Because I mean, like I say, life that it just doesn't matter. It doesn't. It's really just it just branches off into some. It's like the Kenobi book. Well, here's what Obi-Wan Kenobi was doing in the desert. Like who cares? He was in the desert. He was a hermit.
So how do you straddle that line then? If you want the books to matter but not be required to have the movies make sense, how do you straddle that? I mean,
well, first of all, don't have so many of them.
True.
I mean, you don't need like 17,000 of these books coming out.
They're also getting lazy with the titles. They've really got to get better at that. We've had Tarkin, we've had Ahsoka getting announced. Now we got Thrawn. Gee, I wonder who the focus is on these.
Yeah, right.
Mace Windu,
right?
On all of them.
Yep. Yeah, I don't just again don't have so many of them, and find stories that feel like they're important, that it actually matters.
Hopefully, the Ahsoka book will do that, because there's plenty of her story that just doesn't have screen time. If they're trying to give Rebels and its crew the focus, there's just not screen time in the season to get Ahsoka back in there.
Yeah, and I mean, she's a character that there's a lot of interesting things you could tell about.
Plus, there was plenty of stuff they wanted to tell in Clone Wars before it got canceled. So they've got all these story ideas that had to go unused.
Yeah,
they were talking about that like the first day of Celebration, that they had so much stuff for Ahsoka that the show got canceled before they had a chance to do anything with it.
Actually, you know what? That's where the books really serve their purpose. Because I remember reading Dark Disciple. It was a Quinlan Vos Asajj Ventress book.
Yeah.
And it was based off of unproduced scripts of the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the Darth Maul comic book arc, where again those were supposed to be episodes, and they made them into comic books because they didn't have the time to produce those episodes before the show got canceled.
Yeah.
So you want good story ideas for books? Start using some of those unused Clone Wars ideas, or anything that maybe you wanted to explore in Rebels but just don't have time for.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good way to do it. Like I said, I mean, we were talking about Mace Windu movies and, Qui-Gon Jinn movies. Like, make a book. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's plenty of stuff there that people would be interested in, and and I think that brings it full circle. It's.
Yeah, it would be nice. Unfortunately, they're not going to touch the prequel era, we don't think.
Yeah, I mean,
because that's where all that stuff would live nicely.
Yeah. Speaking of bringing it full circle, we're complaining that they're cutting off the prequels. Well, now there's all these stories in the prequels that were unfinished that would be really good to put in books, but maybe they won't because no prequels.
They're really padding all the way around it. It's like this black hole in the timeline. I mean, they're going. We talked about this last week. They're going to go back to the first Jedi Temple. Go way back in time that way, and they're going to go between 3 and 4,
right?
And then they're going to go after 6.
There's going to get to a point where the saturation is going to be so heavy that they have to address stuff that they initially wanted to avoid.
Yeah,
because eventually you're not going to be able to tell any other stories.
Right. I mean, we already talked to Jamie from Blabba, and he said, because he keeps up in the comics, and he said that the main Star Wars comic itself is just getting weird.
Yeah,
because that one I think is between 4 and 5, if I recall.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
And they're just already kind of out of stories that matter, so they're pushing it in weird directions instead. And they've got the Lando standalone series and the Kanan standalone series and the Darth Vader standalone series. And there's not that many stories to tell.
They're going to run out of ideas so hard that they're going to have the bartender in Mos Eisley Cantina story.
Right.
Like his backstory is going to be when he's at intergalactic bartender school.
It's the Ponda Baba story.
Right.
Leading up to the events of episode 4 where he gets his arm chopped off.
Yep.
Hey, allegedly, he's in Rogue One.
Yeah, I heard that
Really?
too.
Ponda Baba. Yeah, one of the actors listed that character as a credit on his IMDb page for Rogue One.
I wonder if that's going to be one of those Easter eggs where it's just in the background and you don't know unless you're looking for it.
That, and I also heard during, from people that were spilling the beans for the Black Room Rogue One trailer that Organa is supposed to be in it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was, I think, wasn't it even in the sizzle reel?
I don't
Where
know if
he
it
was
made
blurred
sizzle
or
reel
hidden
or
behind a
not.
camera in the shot.
I don't know if he made sizzle reel or not, or if he was just in the Dark Room one. Not 100% on that. But
How cool would that be, though?
Those are
Because
cool Easter eggs.
That'd be a cool Easter egg. It's prequel inclusion right there. I mean, you got Jimmy Smits returning as Bail Organa, and they got the same chick to play Mon Mothma who played her in the deleted scenes from Episode 3.
Yep.
So, I mean, that would be excellent. That would be true continuity. If they really want to, maybe they're not going to cover the prequels, but at least they're going to honor them by not recasting those parts. I like that attention to detail.
Very cool. All right, well, on that, let's close up shop for this week. Want to thank everybody for tuning into the live feed. Apparently, episode 1 is a hi everybody. Episode 1 is a hot button topic, and the hot button is the exit button. Why do people hate episode 1 so much? But
green screen.
Yeah, great.
Speaking of
Green screen dialogue.
next time we do Facebook Live and do it on our actual show page, we should put a green screen on back there.
I love it.
Like we're gonna CG stuff in there.
And we're gonna CG a bunch of random things in the background.
Right.
It'd be great.
But yeah, I just want to thank everybody that checked out the live feed. Send us some feedback, good or bad. You can email us feedback@nerfherdercouncil.com. Just hit us up on our Facebook page, our Twitter page. And hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks again for the numbers going up. You know all the usual places to find us. Our Twitter page @NHC Podcast. We have the Facebook page. As we mentioned on the last show, we are now a member of the Uncontrolled Noise Podcasting Network. Thank you, Corey. And
Spreaker.
yeah,
Spreaker is big.
Spreaker is our main one, so if you'd like to download the show, you can stream it off of our website, nerfherdercouncil.com, or you can download it so you can take it anywhere off of Spreaker and check it out that way. So until next time, I am your host, JT at Dog Pound Jedi. He's AJ.
at Drake Adams 579.
He's a very tired Steve,
Very tired. At JSteve1005.
and we will catch you next time.
This bucket of bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus, me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You mad nerf herder.
We're still live. We're still live. We better get that turned off. We're still live.
Right? Just have Boba Fett do it. Boba. Oh, look, we got another live. Now we have 2 more live viewers once we go off the air.